A Suffolk village, 1863. A crowd drags an old man out of the bar of the Swan Inn and down to the stream. He is 80 years old. He is deaf, and he cannot speak. They are going to throw him into the water to find out whether he is a witch, because if he floats, he is guilty. This is not the 17th century. Victoria is on the throne. The railways are running, and an English village is about to swim a man for witchcraft, exactly the way their ancestors did 200 years before. East Anglia was the heartland of the witch trials. This was Matthew Hopkins' country. The witch-finder general did his work in these fields. The trials were supposed to be finished, locked safely in the past. So why did the witch country keep its witches and keep needing them long after everyone agreed they were not real? Tonight, 3 answers. A wise man people brought their thieves to. A village that wouldn't let its last witch die without an heir. And an old man in a stream who shows us what the belief was always really for. Welcome to Unquiet Britain. Early in the 19th century in Ipswich, there lived a man they called Old Winter. He was a wise man, a worker of white magic, and people said he had hypnotic powers, which he used to punish wrongdoers. Once he caught a man stealing vegetables from a doctor's garden and left him sitting in the cabbage patch all night, unable to move. Another time he caught a thief with a load of stolen firewood and is said to have set him walking in circles for hours on end, still carrying the wood, unable to stop. Old Winter was one of dozens like him. The cunning folk, wise men and women, conjurers, charmers, scattered across East Anglia. They found thieves, recovered stolen property, lifted curses, told fortunes, made charms against witchcraft. And here is the thing people forget. The village did not fear them. The village came to them. The law was distant. The cunning man lived down the lane. So watch what is really happening when Old Winter punishes that thief. The village has decided who is guilty, and it points the supernatural straight at him. The wise man is the instrument the community aims at the person it has already condemned. Old Winter's magic landed on a thief, someone who had actually done something wrong. It looks almost like justice. But a village that keeps a witch keeps her for a reason, and the reason isn't always a thief. The village of Horseheath in Cambridgeshire was renowned for its witches well into the 20th century. The most famous was known as Daddy Witch. She lived in a hut by the sheep pond and was said to have drawn all her knowledge from a single book, a book called The Devil's Plantation. In her prime, the story goes, witches and wizards came from miles around to the midnight frolics she held in the lonely fields. The witch from the next parish was seen riding to them through the air on a hurdle, and they were said to come home at dawn drenched in sweat. When Daddy Witch died in 1860, they buried her in the middle of the road that leads to Horseheath Green, and they said her grave never got wet, that the rain dried off the moment it touched the earth, because of the heat still coming off her body. For generations, villagers nodded 9 times before crossing it to keep the bad luck away. But the strangest part of Horseheath isn't the grave, it's the rule. By custom, No witch could die until she had handed her imps on to a successor. Daddy Witch's line passed down 5 of them, each with a name: Bonnie, Redcap, Bluecap, Jupiter, and Venus. The last keeper, Mother Redcap, died in 1926. 2 years later, villagers still spoke of having seen her about the place with a rat, a toad, a cat, a mouse, and a ferret. When she died, a dark figure is said to have carried the imps to the next woman in the village. So look at what Horseheath actually was. Not one witch, an institution. A village so set on having a witch that it appointed a new one every time the old one died, generation after generation, for 100 years. A village that needs a witch badly enough to keep replacing her has a question waiting underneath it. What is the witch for? We're about to find out. Because the same need that crowned Daddy Witch had another face, and that one didn't go looking for a successor. It went looking for someone to blame. Sybil Headingham in Essex, 1863. The Swan Inn and the shallow stream that runs beside it. There was an old man in the village known only as Dummy. Nobody knew his real name. He was about 80, deaf and unable to speak, reputedly French, and he had lived for years in a mud hut on the edge of the village, telling fortunes for his bread, wearing several coats and hats at once, with dogs at his heels. And a woman of the village, a Mrs. Smith, accused him of casting a spell that had made her ill and demanded that he lift it. Now remember old Winter? The village decided who was guilty, and it pointed the old belief straight at him, just as it always had, except Dummy hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't done anything at all. The crime was entirely imaginary. They dragged him from the bar of the Swan, and they threw him into the stream. Float and you're a witch. And they pelted him with stones as he struggled in the water. At last, some of them took pity and pulled him out. He died a few days later in the local workhouse. Mrs. Smith and a man named Stammers were charged with manslaughter, and largely on the evidence of a 10-year-old witness. The two of them were sentenced at Chelmsford in 1864 to 6 months' hard labour. It is the last recorded swimming of a witch in England. Old Winter's village pointed the supernatural at a thief and called it justice. Horseheath pointed it at a chosen woman and called it a witch. Sybil Headingham pointed it at a deaf old stranger who had done nothing at all and called it the same thing. The witch country was never really about witches. It was about a community that needed somewhere to put its fear, and its bad luck, and its blame. And a person it had already decided was the right shape to receive it. That need outlived the trials by 200 years, because the need was never the belief. The belief was only ever the excuse. And on a Victorian evening, with the trains running and the old terror supposedly long dead, it was still enough to put an innocent man in the water one last time. This is Unquiet Britain.